And now with the time at 12 minutes to 1, the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at 0015 today, Tuesday the 8th of September. The general synopsis at 1800, High Hebrides 1032, expected Viking 1029 by 1800 today. High Irish Sea 1032 dissipating. The area of forecasts for the next 24 hours. Viking northerly 4 or 5, becoming variable 3 or 4 later, fair, good. North at Sierra, northerly 4 or 5, becoming variable 3 or 4 later, fair, good. South at Sierra, northerly or northwesterly 5 to 7, becoming variable 4 later, fair, good. 40s, north 4 or 5, becoming variable 3 or 4 later, fair, good. Cromarty, variable 3 or 4, becoming southeast 4 or 5 later, fair, good. Forth Tyne, variable 3 or 4, fair, good. Dogger, north 4 or 5, veering northeast 3 or 4, fair, good. Fisher, northwest 5 to 7, becoming variable 4 later, fair, good. German Bight, north veering east later 4 or 5, occasionally 6 at first, fair, good. Humber Thames, north veering northeast 4 or 5, showers, good. Dover, White, Portland, Plymouth, Biscay, east or northeast 4 or 5, increasing 6 at times, mainly fair, good. Trafalgar, northerly backing southwesterly and northwest, rain later in northwest, moderate or good. South Fitzroy, easterly 5 to 7, at first in the north, otherwise cyclonic, mainly southwesterly 4 or 5, rain later in the west, good, occasionally poor later in the west. North Fitzroy, Seoul, southeasterly becoming cyclonic later in the west, 5 or 6, occasionally 7 in the west, rain later in the west, good, occasionally poor later in the west. Lundy Fastnet, east 3 or 4, veering southeast 5 or 6, fair, good. Irish Sea, variable 3, becoming southeast 4 or 5, fair, good. Shannon Rockall, southeasterly 5 to 7, perhaps gale 8 later in the west, showers later in the west, good. Malin Hebrides, variable 3, becoming southeast 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later, fair, good. Bailey, southerly 4 or 5, backing southeasterly 5 to 7, perhaps gale 8 later in the west, fair, good. Fair Isle, variable 3 or 4, becoming southeast 4 or 5 later, fair, good, occasionally poor. Faroes, southwest 4 or 5, backing south 5 or 6, fair, good. Southeast Iceland, southwesterly backing southerly 5 or 6, occasionally 7 in the north, drizzle, good, occasionally poor. And now we move on to the weather reports from coastal stations for 2300. Tiree automatic, northwest by north 1, 27 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Stornoway, east by north 2, slight showers, 27 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Lerwick, northwest by north 3, continuous slight drizzle, 3 miles, 1031, now falling. Wick automatic, west-northwest 1, 16 miles, 1032, now falling. Aberdeen, north by west 2, 27 miles, 1032, rising more slowly. Lucas, east by south 3, 24 miles, 1032, rising more slowly. Boomer, south by east 1, 14 miles, 1032, now falling. Bridlington, north-northeast 1, 1031, now falling. Sandetti light vessel automatic, northeast by north 5, 11 miles, 1030, now falling. Greenwich light vessel automatic, north 4, 1030, now falling. St. Catherine's Point automatic, northeast 3, 1030, rising more slowly. Jersey, northeast by east 3, 19 miles, 1029, now falling. Channel light vessel automatic, northeast by north 3, 1030, falling slowly. Scilly automatic, east 4, 24 miles, 1029, falling slowly. Milford Haven, northeast 2, 15 miles, 1030, falling slowly. Aberporth, northeast by east 2, 19 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Valley, north by east 2, 16 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Liverpool Crosby, east-northeast 2, 5 miles, 1031, rising more slowly. Valentia, south-southeast 2, 16 miles, 1029, falling slowly. Ronaldsway, north 2, 16 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Malin Head, east by south 3, 27 miles, 1031, falling slowly. Machrihanish automatic, east, northeast 1, 19 miles, 1031, falling slowly. And now here's the weather forecast for the inshore waters of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, valid for the following 24 hours, issued by the Met Office at 2300 on Monday, the 7th of September. The general situation, high pressure over the United Kingdom, will gradually drift away northeastwards, allowing an easterly or southeasterly airflow to develop. Cape Wrath to Rattray Head, including Orkney, wind variable 3 or less, becoming southeast 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later, fair, good, occasionally moderate. Rattray Head to Berwick upon Tweed, variable 3 or less, becoming southerly or southeasterly 3 or 4 later, fair, good. Berwick upon Tweed to Whitby, variable, mainly north, veering southeast 3 or less, mainly fair, good. Whitby to Gibraltar Point, north veering northeast 3 or less, increasing 4 at times, mainly fair, good. Gibraltar Point to North Foreland, northerly veering northeasterly 3 or 4, showers, good. North Foreland to Selsey Bill, northeasterly 4 or 5, veering easterly 5 or 6 later in the west, mainly fair, good. Selsey Bill to Lyme Regis, east 3 or 4, increasing 5, occasionally 6 later, fair, good. Lyme Regis to Land's End, including the Isles of Scilly, east or southeast 3, increasing 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later, fair, good. Land's End to St David's Head, including the Bristol Channel, variable 3 or 4, becoming east or southeast 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later, fair, good. St David's Head to Great Orme Head, including the St George's Channel, variable, becoming southeast 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later, fair, good. Great Orme Head to the Mull of Galloway, variable 3 or less, becoming southeast 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later, fair, good. Isle of Man, variable 3 or less, becoming southeast 3 or 4, increasing 4 or 5 later, fair, good. Loch Foyle to Carlingford Loch, variable 3 or less, becoming southeasterly 3 or 4, occasionally 5 in the North Channel, fair, good. Mull of Galloway to the Mull of Kintyre, including the Firth of Clyde and the North Channel, variable 3 or less, becoming southeasterly 3 or 4, occasionally 5 in the North Channel, fair, good. Mull of Kintyre to Ardnamurchan Point, southeast 3, increasing 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later, fair, good. Ardnamurchan Point to Cape Wrath, southerly or southeasterly 3 or 4, increasing 5 or 6 later in the south and west, fair, good. Shetland Isles, northwesterly 3 or 4, becoming variable 3 or less, then southeasterly 3 or 4, occasionally 5 later in the west, mainly fair, moderate or good, occasionally poor. And that completes The Shipping Bulletin.